And we're live. Hello, Alex. It's so good to see you.
How's it going, Miss in a Jungle?
I am in a jungle. It's going well. It is definitely definitely a jungle here. Jungle circus. Those are the two things. Welcome to all of our viewers. We're here at office hours. Alex, I've got you for 30 minutes. And I'm really stoked because the subject matter today is so relevant to everything you're doing over on the career side. For all of our viewers, the way this works, we're going to dive into today's burning topic, which relates specifically to career growth and company culture. We'll get into those questions in a second. But as we go, if you have questions you want us to tie into the conversation, please feel free to throw them in there. Okay. We'll loop it in and make sure that we cover all of our topics today, but that's the way it works. You can feel free to ask anything that comes up as we go. And just before we get started, Alex, I'll do a really fast. My name's Sheila. I'm from Uvaro. I lead the instruction team, and I have Alyx Parks with me here today, which I'm so stoked. Alyx is our head of careers, and she's had a phenomenal impact on our community members. So I know today's topics are going to be highly relevant. We might have an appearance from the Ducks. I'll mute if that happens. But Alex, just to get us started off, if you can just a quick like how you're doing today, and we're going to dive right to that topic of company culture. So I was going to start us with the question: how important has the company culture issue been in the last 2 years as you're helping grads move through their process? I feel like it's come up a lot.
Yeah. And thanks, Sheila. I love the ducks in the background. I'm not going to lie. It really helps set the tone. Sometimes you got to just quack and make a decision. And so I love the question in the beginning here about just culture in general. I mean, this has been a topic really relevant in the last 2 years, but has really sparked in the last 5 to 7, especially when it comes to tech, right? A lot of people are super focused on, how do I get into a really good company culture? Or how do I recognize a good company culture? How do I understand that it's not the culture for me? It's not serving me anymore. And so, working with hundreds of students that are coming in and looking to learn a little bit more about, whether it's tech sales or some other topic, this is usually the number one question that comes up once we start practicing interviewing, right? And so I love your perspective as well as somebody who's been delivering a lot of this insight in terms of, how do you sell? How do you sell yourself? What does that look like? And how both of us kind of smash into talking about this topic in particular. But it is a topsy for everyone, Sheila.
It really is. And what I've been finding is that when we talk about, where are you going? What's the plan? Let's map out your job search strategy. The culture question comes up most frequently. But what I've been finding is that anywhere from 3 months to a year into a grad's new role, the question that then comes up is career growth and potential. And I don't always hear that as being on the list of non-negotiables early in the job search. There's exceptions, of course, but I more commonly hear the culture thing. So, one, when you're dealing with grads, are you finding the same? Like you find it comes up a little while into their next role, or are they also, factoring that in when they're in the job search area?
Totally.
Yeah.
And as we were kind of chatting about earlier, it usually is one of the number one things that's asked before they've even moved into their job search. And so it's a high consideration about how do I know that this company is going to serve me with the right culture? And that question in particular is so hard because you just won't know unless, you take a peek on the book cover of their website. But realistically, you have to start having conversations with people either in that company or who've worked there or in other companies around it to really understand the flow and what that culture does. And so it is just absolutely critical to start doing that if you're wondering early in your job search.
Hmm. So, and this is like, I love how these topics are all tying together because we talked about managing upward at one point, and I chatted with Megan recently about like, how do you keep that relationship with your manager solid so you can open the pathway for those conversations? But like this week's burning question, this month's burning question, sorry, is what do you do if you love your company culture, you love your role, but the actual career paths are either limited or it's too long of a time frame. And this is something that comes up frequently if I've got a grad placed with an early stage startup. They discerned, looked for career paths, and then the company exploded and hit a point where suddenly the paths that they were originally finding were available to them have changed. And maybe the nature of the roles changed, maybe the time frames changed, but it's like, what do we do then? So where would you start? You have a grad who's come to you and asked, what do I do, Alex? What's your first step?
Yeah, let's say, I mean, if you're in the job, right, it's twofold, right? So when you are interviewing and you get that job and you're really excited, a lot of companies will say, let's say you're a BDR and you want to shoot up to an AE, right? That's your career path. And they say typically, 12 to 14 months is when we will consider moving you into that category. And so, okay, that's cool. And then what happens? You get into the role, and either that's tried and true, and they are really working hard to get you into that space where they can catapult you into the realm of AE in that time frame, and maybe you actually get there sooner, right? You are doing all the work, you are crushing your targets, you are making the calls. Even if you are not actually hitting quota, you're doing everything in your power to do it, and it's showing that you are that person. Now, on the flip side of things, just as you had mentioned, things can change, right? Um, Teams can shift, and like kind of quota or what they're expecting or the product can change. And so that just elongates the time for that specific career growth. And now the one thing to really look out for is communication, right? If there is not a lot of communication from your manager or from, let's say, the C-suite that are coming down and talking about company updates and having an all hands every month and not necessarily talking about this, that's a flag. Okay. And so communication and being able to feel that you can communicate to your manager about these changes is honestly the best thing that you could possibly do to just begin having that conversation. Don't jump ship, right? Don't jump ship if you hear that this might be a little bit longer before having these conversations. Is that something that you've gone through as well, or are you purchasing?
Yeah, that don't jump ship. Like it, most of the process I go through with grads is figuring out where their tolerance level is when it comes to do I jump ship or not. Because and I'll be frank, they bring the question to me because it's a safe space. It's not, with their manager, right? Having the conversation about it. And if they really are bought into the mission and everything, the conversation that I usually have is that the hiring, the progression, the career path is always going to be tied to business need. And if the business need isn't there, they can't make the changes. And the reality of rapid change and growth, sometimes those needs shift around, right? So the primary thing I try to remind them is not to take it personally. It's not a reflection. Yeah, and it's so hard to do, right? Because it's career path and they've just gone through that whole job search roller coaster, which is so hard not to take personally. When they get to the point, they've been nailing their targets, they're achieving all of their quotas. It's like, okay, the career paths aren't the same. I'm not sure if the growth is here for me. Okay, breathe. Don't take it personally. And before you jump ship, consider all of these things. And the things that we're considering are, with an extended timeline, what do you acquire? How can you grow? And I think it kind of all comes down to this scenario where if you love the company, you love the product, just because the timeline isn't the same, if there's still growth for you, maybe it's not title, maybe it's not shift, but there's still opportunity to learn and get better, then I'm like, don't jump ship. Yeah. Would you add anything to that list of if this is still here, stick it out, and then we'll talk about all the flags you just mentioned.
Totally. And actually, you brought up a really good point, and it made me think of the fact that growth and change could be just totally different, and you're feeling a little bit, I don't like this. This doesn't mean growth. I'm stagnant, because you don't understand yet what that new growth might actually look like, right? So it's like we're looking at a tree, right? Sometimes trees, they have branches that aren't doing super well. And so the tree, the trunk in itself, the opportunity will stop feeding a lot of those nutrients to those branches. But all of a sudden on the other side or on the bottom, you see a lot of these suckers, these little saplings that are shooting off in a different direction. And I want you to picture that, right? Everyone who's watching here today, obviously I like plants and growth, but realistically, we need to remember that companies want to serve you. They want to retain you as talent because it's super hard to let people go. It's expensive. It's time consuming. And so there's likely behind the scenes lots of discussion about your growth in particular, but it is always up to you to help push that along, because companies have a lot of things that they're doing. There's a lot of growth. There's a lot of action items. And so again, to that communication, there is a lot of that conversation. This might be a growth path that you don't know of yet, or you're unsure of, and you need that clarification. And a lot of the times you'd be so shocked at what you'd be able to do, even if it's not what you originally signed up for.
My mic there, sorry. So much great advice going on in there. And that last piece you're saying, even if it's not the job you signed up for, like the last conversation I had on this platform was with Megan, and we were talking about this exact thing. Like maybe you put the job posting up, you hire the person, and then change happens, like everything's different. So at that point, you're in the evaluation stages. And what came out of that conversation was this idea of controlling your controllables, right? So maybe it feels personal, maybe it feels like a disappointment, but in that situation, there are still things you can control. And maybe what you're controlling is not the title, and it feels like that's important to you, but look at all the other things and then weigh them against each other.
Yes.
And I think that part might be pretty individual, like which pieces weigh heavier, because everybody I'm speaking to about this is at different points in their career. And some people are at a point where, to hang out a little bit longer in a prospecting role is just going to mature their skill sets, versus others who are, coming in with heavy professional experience and are looking to move on to next steps faster. So it's very, very individual there. The one piece that I loved about that whole explanation was your plants and your the growth analogies. Those are near and dear to my heart. I appreciate those. So I'm super curious, as we're digging into this, how you feel about this idea of, I said, don't take it personally. The other thing I always follow up with is, it cannot affect your performance. So whatever they choose to do, whether it's, okay, I'm going to start shopping around, I'm going to start looking and at least doing this thing. I'm very stressed very highly that it's like, don't let it affect your performance, because if you kind of check out that way and you've got one foot out the door, then it's like you're not giving anybody a chance in that situation to win. Is that something that's come up in your conversations as well?
Oh my gosh. Just this week, I've had about 3 people contact me saying, hey, I might be looking for my next opportunity. Here are the reasons, right? And, one in particular is really interesting because it's always a constant depending on how you like to work. And so I love what you just said about, you got to find that balance. This actually kicks back to lessons on personal branding and focusing on value. What do you need to be successful? What do you value in a team? What do you value in growth? What does that look like? Do you want more of a bigger, larger company, or a smaller startup where you can sink your teeth into interesting and challenging problems? And so a couple of the examples coming through is, I have a CEO that's micromanaging me a lot, and it's not something that I feel comfortable with. I like to just do my own thing. Or the company culture is a little bit too relaxed, right? They're focused on ping pong and just after hour drinking and things like that, which I find people really want. They want that flexibility. But in actuality, what they're looking for is, work-life balance, being able to take unlimited PTO and having that support consistently. And so the conversations that we always have, and that I always say as a coach and as an instructor as well, Sheila, we're not solving your problems. We are asking you the challenging questions so you can make the decision of either I need to communicate that I'm looking for a different path, or I think I need to move on and look at a different circumstance or different opportunities. And so that might look like, let's break down your last 6 months or your last year, right? What are the things that went really well? Are you continuing to perform? Are you looking to leave because your performance is dipping because of what's happening at work? And breaking that down, and you'd be shocked at, exactly as you said, how many people are just losing steam because they are being micromanaged, or the culture is a little bit too relaxed and they don't know where they fit, or it's too intense and they can't handle that pressure. So all of that, there's nothing wrong with it. And most people, and I'm sure you agree, will come to us and say, there's something wrong with me. I'm not doing well. Why don't I fit in? Right?
Yeah. And I love where you're taking this, because that sounds like a need for not just, you mentioned having conversations with your managers and with your leadership to push careers forward, but that sounds like a really important conversation for anyone to have with themselves.
Yes.
When they start to feel that, like, this is not for me. It's like, okay, turn it inwards, think about it. Why are you feeling this? Where is it coming from? And that example you just shared of, it's because you're not achieving targets, right? Does that mean it's an issue of career path and growth and fostering, or is there something going on here that you can control? And
Right.
have you done all the things you could do to try and control the extrinsic factors, like that situation with the CEO? Has there been a conversation? Is there a scenario where there could be? I don't know. And that's going to go on to the decision making balance list for me anyway.
100%. And one thing that always comes to light here, and for everyone to remember, this will always feel like rejection.
Hmm.
Not necessarily a company rejecting you, but you rejecting either the job that you're doing or them or some part of your daily routine.
Yeah.
And that is just as difficult to handle as rejection coming at you from someone else.
Mhm.
Okay. And so being able to really understand and deliver, a good positive mindset towards any type of rejection is going to be a massive key to unlock what your next step is going to be. And that's obviously what we do here, trying to work
Mhm.
through what that looks like and get you to the point of understanding and not feeling like everything is your fault if that's happening.
Absolutely. That emotional side of things is it's so interesting. We bring it up on the sales side of things when we're talking about the emotional selling. And realistically, you have to look at business decisions, business purchasing decisions, but it's people inside the business making those decisions move forward. So
Right.
you've got to align the two things and tie them together. I think when you're in a company that you love and you believe in, and like if you did your due diligence shopping, you're aligned to the mission, that kind of thing. So to hit a point where you're looking for career growth and not getting it, that rejection piece is very hard to separate from the reality of what's going on, because it's businesses making decisions and driving towards mission. But the reality is there's people, there's
Mhm.
people involved. And so when you run into this thing where you start to feel like a kind of backlash, or the out, what's the word I'm looking for? A collateral damage. There you go. Looking at where the people start to feel like their career is the collateral damage. I think when that hits a tipping point is typically when people are like, okay, so I need to think about next steps, because the reality is that the people in your business have to take care of themselves. So make a list, list out all your, where you're at, what you're needing, what you're looking for, and then how does that decision making take place. This is like spiraling. Right? I love how often these issues come up, and that we're able to provide a safe space to have these conversations. I think we do have a couple questions though coming in, so let me pull one of these up and see where we're at. How do I find the how do I find the right job from the start that will lead to a successful future? That is the question, right? And that's a huge part of the interview practice and the filtering and the, creating your own qualification criteria. Like, what are the non-negotiables that you have? But that last piece, successful future, I feel like this is where we're going to have to kind of start from to answer this question. Alyx, let's take a crack at this. Where would you start?
This is not going to be a popular answer, but it will lead to a popular decision at the end of the day. And so, how do I find the right job from the start that will lead to a successful career? The problem with this question, no questions are problems, but the problem with this one is from the start. It is unbelievably difficult to find the one from the start. Sheila and I can both tell you we have not been able to do that. I am 10 years into my recruitment journey, recruitment, sales, development, then UX designer, then coach. And I am now finally able to find my niche. And so, what happens here, and the lesson that I would really love to give that we talk about often, is please do everything in your power to generalize and work your way up to specialize. Do not do it the other way, because that's very difficult to do. And so when you are just beginning and you are going to find this job or this new job, maybe a new industry or just something different, it is 97% unlikely that you're going to find the one as the first time, right? And that's okay. I don't want you to. Sheila doesn't want you to. We want you to be able to find multiple different places that are going to serve you for what you need in that moment to gain everything you need to get to that specialized place where you feel you've taken everything that you've learned and every place that you've gone to and have been able to create a system that will create that amazing career. And so unpopular, right?
Yeah. But so important. Like, I love the way you frame that. Instead of starting with a specialization and thinking that you're going to find the one, not even company, but the one path, taking that approach of flipping it, start with generalized, work towards the specialization. Like that's beautiful advice that I wish were given to people in high school, so they didn't come out of high school and think, I'm going to choose my specialization.
No,
I know. Oh my gosh. I think what would really help if we could tie, and this is for like every person thinking about careers, if you could tie what you just said about like think general, working towards specific, take the time to think through your long-term overarching why. And we're always talking about what's your why for personal branding, but like when you think career path, I love working with grads who come and they know, they're like, I know 10 years down the road, I want to be a VP sales. So what I want to do right now is learn the entire cycle inside and out. So I'm going to start with a prospecting role. And when I'm ready, I'm going to specialize in closing. And then I'm going to move to post sales. And so the company doesn't really matter. And maybe it'll be with the same company the whole time, who knows? But if not, they at least have that guiding. They'd be like, this is where I am in the funnel. This is what I need to learn. So it becomes much less about finding the one place, but understanding what body of information you're trying to acquire in order to move you towards that why. The why changes, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You're like so many tries, right? Figuring out where we are. And I hear you. I'm with you. I'm like, now being in a place where I feel like I can take all of these things and pull it together and do the thing that feels like, okay, I'm here, right? But I can't agree enough with this idea that it doesn't have to be the one from the start.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And I love what you just said, with understanding your why and trying to figure out what it is, because it will change. This isn't something that's going to be consistent, so when you say I want to be a VP of sales in 10 years, you must be okay changing. You have to be, right? It's probably the most important thing and mindset that you need to create for yourself, and not to be debilitatingly upset if that changes or if that's not happening as fast as you need, right? And so breaking down that why, what are the very specific reasons why that VP of sales or director or even manager is on your radar? And does it connect back with who you are outside of work? That's really the formula that's going to help you create this path and then fork other paths of opportunity, right? Because we're generalizing and then specializing.
It's a lot of ingredients. So there's never one short answer, right? I like that. A lot of things to think about. Let's pull up another one of these. I think there's a couple in the queue, question-wise. Leaving is the only option to achieve my goals. How do I find another company with similar cultures and values? Wow, this is a good question. And there's like my ideal best world scenario route that I would take with this, but also reality is that not all companies work that way. So Alyx, I'm curious how you'd approach this, and I'll throw in my magic wish version of things after. Go for it.
Magic wish. I'm going to start this with an analogy. Okay, so if leaving is the only option to achieve my goals, how do I find another company with similar culture and value? Think of a friend that you've had. They are no longer serving you. They are an energy suck, and they are just not the person that you want to spend time with anymore. It's difficult to be able to actually have a relationship with them, and you have to make the gut-wrenching decision to leave that friendship. And then you say, well, how do I find more friends? Like, I don't really have a best friend, or I don't have a friend anymore, but I've had to do this and make this call. What are you going to do? Right? How do you figure that out on who's going to be a good person to hang out with and to be with and to spend time with? And now you're not just going to sit back and wait, right? You're not going to just go through Facebook or Instagram and, like a couple things. No, you're going to go and have an incredible amount of conversations. You are going to engage new people. You're going to go places to meet people, to say, hey, how are you? How's it going? I'd love to talk a little bit more about, the fact that you're in a jungle right now, Sheila. Where are you? And being able to understand someone. And so mirror that to your career, right? And that's not me saying, go to a bunch of meetups. Maybe you're introverted and you don't want to do that. But being able to start a conversation with a company that you've noticed is doing great things, right? Google, what are the top Toronto tech companies in 2022 right now? Google's my best friend. And uncover a list of places that people are talking about. Why are they talking about them? Then you research them and you understand, oh my goodness, this company is literally becoming a career success company to help change millions of people's lives. Well, I want to meet them. I'm going to message Sheila directly and say, this really appeals to me. How did you build this? And start that conversation. That is the only way that you're really going to be able to suss out people who have the same values, because it's people that make companies. Companies don't just exist. It's people that make companies.
I love when themes emerge from our conversations. I feel like that's come up a couple of times. There's the people inside the companies, and I love how often these topics take us back to the early stage prospecting. Have the conversations, make the connections, human to human. I'll share my magic wand scenario, and I say it's magic wand because I've seen this play out within a company, and I was floored. Like, it really made me feel like, wow, I'm in the right place. But I also know that not a lot of companies operate this way. So hypothetically, my best case scenario, if a person was to run into this firm decision, the career path I want is not here. They should, in a perfect world, be able to have that conversation with their manager and potentially tee up a warm intro somewhere else. And isn't that magical? And I've actually seen that happen. I have a former colleague who now works somewhere else because of a direct intro that her direct manager made when she realized that things weren't aligned. And that, when I heard about that, I was like, whoa.
Right.
That's, your manager should care so much about you as a person and your career growth that when it hits a point where it's a clear DQ, maybe it's in both directions, who knows, but definitely in the one direction. Like, what a magical scenario to be able to have that. And I have heard from one or two other actually sales leaders in this space that they go by this, they adhere to this idea that you should care so much about your people that you should foster their career growth, even if it means they leave your company. And like that kind of culture is on my list. Anyway, reality, not everywhere operates like that, right?
Mm-hmm. I love that, and I love that last part. Reality, not everywhere operates that way. And so the best thing that you can do is grab that balance. Sheila's magic wand of being able to communicate to your direct manager, this isn't serving me. What do I do? That might lead you to a new opportunity in the same company. We've seen that actually happen here at Uvaro. And it's like, wow, that's hot diggity.
The huge lateral shift.
Okay.
I love that. I love that.
Right. And the other side of it, if the environment isn't necessarily a place where you feel confident or have a lot of conviction or that you can actually have that conversation, being able to uncover that you have the control, just as Sheila was talking about, to go out and enable conversations based on your research and what you're looking for and your why and your values, that is the best thing that you can do for your career. And it might not be next. It might be in 2, 5, 10 years, but you'll know when you get there.
This is great. All right, so themes I've pulled from today: the humans in the business, make the connection, right? Do the thing that's going to serve you best. Don't immediately jump ship. Make your lists, wait and balance them. But Alyx, I've really enjoyed this. I actually kind of feel like we should book time to do this more regularly because I got a lot out of this. Thank you so much for making time today and for joining me. I don't have any last advice. Do you have any last things to keep in mind that you want to end on, or should we just peace out here? What do you think?
Yeah, I love piecing, but I want everybody to remember the C word, right? That's conviction. It's always conviction over confidence. You are the one that can have conviction about your decisions, conviction about the opportunity, the utter and unrelenting belief of what will serve you and what's not serving you. Once you get that, you understand it, then the next C word, communication, can begin. Okay? And coaching with us is the best route to go.
This is great. Thank you so much, Alyx. This is great advice. I appreciate your time so much. You have a great day.
You too.